Hey, welcome back into another episode of Mindset Monday with me, Matt, one half of Two Folk Couple, where I talk about what I did personally to rebuild my life, to stay sober, to become a better father, a better husband, a better professional. I break little chunks of my life into these tiny little digestible episodes that hopefully you can gain something from. And it's not just for people like me who are trying to rebuild their life, to get sober, to stay that way. This is also for loved ones, for spouses and partners. What I hope that you get here is some semblance of what it actually took from a real life couple to rebuild their marriage. If you follow our content, if you know us well enough and you like what you see, I hope that you get some inside info here. What that's going to do for you, I think, is set some bar. I'm not saying it's the bar, but it sets a bar for what I think repair can look like. There are different ways to do it. This is how we did it. But it's going to help you as you're walking through your journey and you're feeling in your gut like something's not right here. Something's not right. This could be very validating for you because chances are, if you're feeling that way, you're probably correct. We get a lot of listener questions, and I love listener questions, not just because that's low-hanging fruit for content, because I get busy and I legitimately sometimes an hour before I sit down to put a camera in front of my face, I'm like, I have no clue what I'm talking about. So you guys do help with that, but it also kind of helps me know what guys like me are up to out there in the world still. See, my exposure now, a lot of the times with people who are struggling, it's limited to treatment centers and things like that. I get interaction, but not as much as I would like. Even then, when I interact with someone in a setting of recovery, their spouse isn't there. And I've always wondered what's going through their spouse's mind. Like truly walking this journey with you all and with Tufo has been the most enlightening experience of my life. It made me recognize that most of the people that I come across are blowing smoke up my ass because I know what happens behind closed doors. I know what happens because I've talked to your wife, right? And some of the stuff I hear just floors me, man. It breaks my heart, but it makes me want to work that much harder to get a message out to as many people as possible that it can hopefully make one person's experience better in rebuilding or getting to safety on the other side of that as a spouse or a partner. Knowing what it looks like when it's time to hang it up. You know, that's a real conversation some people are having right now. I hope that I can be something for you that inspires you, that educates you. We're going to talk about a couple different things. I'm splitting this episode into two different parts, and they may not seem like related concepts, but they actually are. First thing we're going to talk about is this idea of living amends. We got this really good listener question, which we will read a little bit later, about living amends. If you've never heard about the word living amends, a living amends, it's a 12-step term. Whenever you make amends in step 9, right? Made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. This is known as it's like where you go and you tell everyone about all the horrible things you did and that you're sorry. And it's sort of like it's supposed to breed humility and accountability, and it's supposed to give other people permission to walk forward and heal. That's the idea behind the step. But it's not always possible because sometimes people have removed themselves from your life. Let's say that they moved halfway across the world and ceased all contact with you. Like, how would you make amends with that person if you have no way to contact them? Well, we can do what's called living amends. We can live in honor of that person and the memory of that person if they're no longer here. There are ways to make living amends. And what it really means is I'm going to change my behavior moving forward in honor of the way that I treated them in the past. But this doesn't apply if this person is still in your life. This doesn't apply if you still have access, you can get a hold of this person. And it certainly doesn't apply if you still live with this person and you're still married to this person. And that's what this listener question was about. Hey, my husband has made quote unquote living amends to me, but has made real amends to other people. What the F is that about? We're going to talk about why amends are so important and why living amends don't cut it. Why the actual process of making amends with somebody is important. We're going to get into the psychology of validation and how it's a very empowering process for victims as they move forward in the story they tell themselves. And it's equally as beneficial for the person who has caused harm to understand the true weight of those harms and what they've really done. It's win-win, guys. It's win-win. But there's a lot of people who just want to go the chicken shit away about it and don't want to admit it. And we're going to talk about that. Now, there are going to be some number of people that never get this. Truly. And that's something that's always driven me absolutely crazy in our comment sections from people. It's like everyone assumes that everyone works the 12 steps. And like there are a million ways to get sober. That's just one of them. It's a rather common one. Don't get me wrong. It's been around for a very long time. But we get people who are triggered in recovery all the time and come and attack us in comment sections saying, that's what the amends are for. Okay, you're assuming that A, everyone was working a 12-step program, and then B, if they do, they're actually getting that far, which a lot of people don't. There are far more people who don't get through it than get through it, okay? So stop assuming that everyone has gotten to that point and that everyone is just like you. And I know it seems kind of crazy sometimes, but I think in 12-step communities, you can get so invested in the people around you who are doing the right thing that you forget how many people aren't. And that's what's been really enlightening about my journey, specifically personally, and working until the wheels fall off with Paige and building the show to what it is today, is having a real look inside the homes of people and understanding what goes on behind closed doors. And I have to believe now, see, I'm a rather naive person. I tend to trust people. I believe what they say. And I like to think that people are telling me the truth and they're being genuine and authentic with me, because I expect me out of people, because that's what I do. And so I would expect others to do the same. But just the sheer odds of it now, I know that a lot of people are blowing smoke up my ass. And so when I hear the stories about people that are trying to do the right thing or what they've done or how it was, they're just a victim of circumstance, it's probably bullshit. I've heard enough stories now where you might even call me jaded to the other side of this thing, because I've heard so many accounts of spouses and partners that have had the opposite of what I did and what the path that I walked. And believe me, there are a lot of people that are doing it right, but I think that there are far more doing it wrong. And so we're going to talk about the process of living amends. I think a lot of times spouses feel really left out in this process, and you shouldn't. You should be intimately involved in that process of amends and making things right, because after all, you are the victim here. Like, truly, you are. You've been harmed, and you deserve to be heard. You deserve to have someone speak up for you. And so, for what it's worth, I'll do that. And there's going to be a lot of people too who never get amends of any kind. And so, how do you live with that? How do you make sense of that? And we're going to shift the topic a bit into the spiritual realm, spirituality. It's something we never really talk about. And I kind of avoid it on purpose. Discussions on spirituality and spiritual matters in general I never want to be a target for anyone to come after me for the wrong reasons. And I certainly wouldn't also want to be someone that pushed other people away on something. I think that we all experience spirituality differently. And that is true if you don't even consider yourself a spiritual person. But I'm going to talk about the benefits of having something, right? We've had several other listeners write in, thank you to you guys as well, asking about spirituality. Like, hey, what does this actually mean? And how do you develop some sort of spiritual relationship if you don't even know what that looks like? Let's say that you have trauma from the church. How do you come to terms with something, right? Because I think that in a lot of ways, humans have always looked toward the sky for answers, and we've looked for peace in turmoil. And spirituality can provide that for people. I had a lot of trouble with this, like a lot of trouble with this. And it's something we don't talk about because, again, I don't want people to I don't want to be painted as someone who's trying to like I'm not trying to recruit anybody for anything. And I'm certainly not trying to push people away from anything that they found comfort in. And so I've never wanted to be a divisive figure in any of this. And so I've just shut my mouth on it. But it is a really important part of my life. And I will share with you how I was able to build something from nothing. I was an atheist a little more than a decade ago. Truly, like I was the guy that would debate with you why God didn't exist. And I was angry. And when I got sober and I was introduced to spiritual concepts, I was very reluctant to embrace any of that. This is the one part of recovery that I was kind of in the beginning like, we're not having that conversation at all. But I'm grateful that I was forced to. I'm grateful that it really made me look at some things in my life differently. And I am happier and I'm better for it. And I think that it can provide us peace sometimes whenever life doesn't, whenever circumstances don't, whenever we don't have answers, why terrible things happen and we don't know why. It can be really useful. It can be a really useful tool. And we are not just going to talk about religion here. We're going to mention religion. Certainly it's a part of the conversation, but in general, the idea of acceptance. Acceptance was my first form of God, if you will, in reality. And I think that the way I talk about this hopefully is going to be beneficial for those of you that have written in. There's been many actually that have really struggled with this idea. This is where I started. I'm not saying it's where you need to start, but it's a good place to look because it's going to open a lot of doors. So we're going to get into that. First things first, thank you to SoberLink. SoberLink is a sponsor of today's show. If If you don't know what it is by now, it is the world's greatest accountability device disguised as a breathalyzer. If you're somebody like me and you're really trying to change and you're trying to do something different and new, why is anyone going to believe you? That was something that I faced, like truly. Like I had said it a million times, but at this point, my words had lost credibility. I was like the boy that cried wolf. No one believed me anymore because I'd said a million things and I had gone back on those words more times than I can possibly count. SoberLink can be the very thing that sets you apart this time. It can be the thing that, quote unquote, makes it different this time. Because SoberLink's much more than just a breathalyzer. You set up a network of people that get notified every time you use the device. So every negative test in some sense represents a drop back into that bucket of trust. It's lost. Trust is lost in buckets. It's rebuilt in tiny little droplets. It's so much easier to lose it than it is to build it back. So have every tool at your disposal whenever you're in this process. And SoberLink's a great one. It gives your loved ones visibility that very few things can. I can come home and tell Paige, I didn't drink today. And she's going to look at me and go, my experience with you over the last however many years tells me that could be 50-50. Well, she's going to have proof. She's going to get a test and it's just going to show negative. It's going to help her breathe a little bit, exhale a little bit. Spouses don't want to look for bottles. They don't want to babysit you. They don't want to mother you. They don't want to have to do all this stuff. They don't want to track your location. They just want to be able to trust you again. Give them the gift of visibility and trust whenever you get a SoberLink. And it's never been easier or cheaper to get one. No more upfront costs. You can rent these things for just $19 a month. You have no more excuses. $19 a month gets you a device whenever you sign up for a 1-year plan, which is a great start anyway. 1 year, man. It takes a while to reestablish habits, to reestablish trust. And 1 year is a great timeline, I think, to get started on. You may even want it longer than that. But if you go to our website, soberlink.com/wheels, that's our special show link. They will also send you a $100 Visa gift card as a rebate. You can use it on anything you want. You can apply it toward the monthly plan cost. You can buy TUFO merch with it, which we'll talk about in a second. Or you can just spend it on Amazon, whatever you want to do with it. But since you're an awesome listener of this show, they're going to give you that $100 gift card. Hey, and if you're on the outside of a relationship and you're trying to make sure your kids are safe, SoberLink is there for you too. They always have been. It's court admissible in all 50 states and in Canada. Anywhere you go, this thing can be used to make sure your children are safe because you can get them written into your custody agreements. No more wondering if someone's sober whenever your children are over there. I can't guarantee they're going to behave the best, but at least we know they're sober. It gives them the best chance, right? Again, soberlink.com/wheels to learn more about the different plans, the rental options, and to get that $100 rebate. So support the companies to support our show. And while you are on the internet, head over to tufo.com. You can learn more about our program, Independently Strong, the program that we built with a licensed therapist, Dr. Christopher Taylor, to help spouses reclaim their identity, reclaim their safety, reclaim themselves. We've also got merch. We're working on some more right now. It's actually on the way. We'll have that up here pretty soon. We've got recovery rocks, though. Just got a new shipment of these. It's got our logo on the front, and on the back it says, "Thank you for being my rock." There was a listener at one point who gave me this idea for these. I don't remember your name, but dude, thank you. Awesome. Oh my God, I'm slamming the microphones. We've got hats, sweatshirts, tons of stickers. Put them on your water bottles, whatever. Every dollar that you invest into the show goes right back into the show. Paige and I have never paid ourselves $1 for doing any of this. Everything goes back into like lights, cameras, editors, computers, mixers, subscriptions, all the stuff that makes the show possible. So in a lot of ways, you're just supporting the content that you love. And we'll continue to do that. We'll continue to invest back into the content to make the show better and better, getting awesome guests on, all kinds of cool stuff. We've got a lot of things in the works, and we thank you guys for being listeners. That's one way to support the show. Another way, if you just want to donate, we got an option for that too. Paige made a link called Buy Me a Coffee. It's in our show notes. It's also in any of our social media profiles. You want to give us $1 for a cup of coffee? We appreciate it. Helps those late nights writing content, making videos and editing and doing all that fun stuff. You can set it up monthly. You can set it up for one time, or you can just not set it up at all, in which case we still love you. Totally. Doesn't matter. Our love for you is not contingent on anything we ever receive. I promise you that. We love you no matter what. But it's available for anyone that wants to help. We really do appreciate it. I think that's everything. As always, if I forget something, we will circle back to it. All right. So on to the episode. We opened up, talked about how this person had written in and they never really had amends. And their husband said he would do living amends. No apology, no detailed accountability. which really does fly in the face of the spirit of that step, right? If you're working a 12-step program, it's pretty clear what that looks like and when you need to do it. It's definitely not because you don't feel like it. It's not because you don't want to open up Pandora's box and you don't want to, open up that can of worms because you know that it's going to be a tough conversation, but it's one that you need to have. And it's really not about you. It's about them. You get help from it. Don't get me wrong. There's something freeing about that process because in your mind, whenever you go to make amends, like I was scared to death making amends, man, because you come forth with these things that generally people know about, but not always. Like I had stolen people's medication before and they weren't aware. And I had to tell them like, hey, I went over to your house for a holiday thing and I got into the medicine cabinet and I stole some pills and I am sorry. And if there's any way I could ever make that right, I mean, obviously I can't replace the drugs I don't have and I can't necessarily go buy them, but like if there's anything I can ever do, since you're in pain, if you need me to come help you with something, like whatever I can do, like the whole point of amends, it's to make like restitution, is to make things right. It's not just my bad, right? It's an actual, like there was this sign in Jimmy John's sandwich shop that said a proper apology consists of a few parts. And it was what I did was wrong. I feel badly that I hurt you. And what can I do to make this right? I would add a fourth to that, which is there anything that I haven't acknowledged I need to know about? But those are the important parts of an apology. What I did was wrong. Acknowledging what we've done is huge. I mean, it's massive in the healing journey for a spouse or a partner. To hear those words out loud, it's important to know that you know what you did that hurt so bad. And it's not so they can rub your face in shit. It's not so they can shame you. It's not so you feel shame. It's for them. So they can hear it from you that they know truly that you know the source of the pain and that you know that it was wrong. You know how important that is psychologically to know that you've been seen by somebody or that you feel known by somebody, that someone's aware? Because if they're aware of it and they know it was wrong, then they're less likely to repeat it again. This reestablishes safety. We'll get into some of the neuroscience behind all this stuff, but at no point does it ever say you can just pretend like it didn't happen and move forward. It doesn't say anything like that. I can't think of a single rational person, whether this is a therapist, counselor, I don't know. I take that back. I've heard from some crazy counselors here lately. We're not therapists. This isn't therapy. I am not licensed in anything, not mental health wise anyway, but it's always blown my mind some of the stuff that I'll hear from you guys about what your counselors have said is okay. It is not okay to just ignore this crap and move forward. It's not. I think every guy would like that. I know that as men, that's how we operate, right? Like me and a friend, hang on, I forgot my water bottle, so I have to chew gum. I had a friend, I've known him most of my life, since like first grade, second grade. And we were playing hockey in high school. We were on a hockey team together. We were out in the parking lot and we were play fighting kind of. Like I still had my gloves on, the hockey gloves. We were messing around and I swung and I hit him in the nose, like pretty hard. And I was like, I'm sorry. And he looked at me and I knew in that moment, I've seen that look from my brothers before. It's like, this guy's seeing red. It's on. And so I felt horrible. I was trying to run away at this point, screaming, I'm sorry. And he chased me down and tackled me and started wailing on me, right? Started punching me in the back of the head. And I was like, okay, that's enough. And then he got off of me really pissed off, said something really, really mean, and then got in this car and peeled out and drove out of the parking lot. And I was pissed at this point too, because I was like, dude, like I was saying, I'm sorry. Like, it was obviously an accident. I had witnesses. I felt bad. Like what can you do? I let him beat up on me a little bit. I wasn't trying to fight him back. But after that same night, like in my mind, partly I'm like, if I see him, I'm going to whip his ass. If I see that dude, it's on, man. And then we ended up seeing each other at a restaurant later that same night. We lived in a small town and we came up to each other and gave each other a hug. And it was like, I'm sorry. Didn't say what for, didn't acknowledge anything. And we just moved on. We're still friends to this day. I saw him Thursday night. We hung out for hours and still one of my best friends. But we never really talked about it. That's how guys roll. I've been in more scuffles and stuff with my friends and we just kind of move forward. And that's kind of how guys roll. I think that Is that healthy? I don't know. Maybe sometimes it is. Maybe sometimes we don't need to recount every painful moment. Like, we both know, we understand, we're adults. But I think that assumes that you both really understand the harm done. You know what I mean? Me and him were really close, like at the time that this happened and then after that. And if it was ever an issue, I know that I could talk to him about it. He could talk to me. But I think if you're in a relationship that has been on the rocks for a very long period of time, it's probably not safe to assume that all this is known, if that makes sense. Like, when Paige and I were rebuilding, I would have liked to just say, let's just move forward. But the problem is that I felt like we were on like different continents, and there's this big rift between us, and we didn't have a lot of common ground. We weren't on the same page anymore, and we hadn't been for quite some time. It was really necessary that we had those like in-depth conversations. In doing that, it helped us get back onto the same page. It helped me really understand what I had done and how that felt to her, what that was like through her eyes. It's important, really important. And so my guess is, based on this listener's letter, that you two are not very close right now. You're not on the same page. You very much would like to have a discussion about this. And I think that you're owed that discussion. Be very clear about that. You are owed that discussion. Justice dictates that the person that harmed has to take the lead in repair. And that means all things repair. And they don't get to dictate necessarily what that looks like or your timeline for it, but they have to take the lead. And I think the first step of that is acknowledgement. It's validation. Within our course, we use the process we call VEER: validate, educate, empower, recover. Validate's the first step for a very good reason. This is when you get permission to make sense of your pain. This is when you're given permission to say the word out loud. You hurt me. You've abused me. And you need to hear it from them. It gives you some sense of closure whenever you hear that from them. If you're not hearing it and they're just moving forward, that's avoidance. That's nothing more than avoidance. You can't skip this step. Like, if you ever want to have trust in your relationship again, you cannot skip this step. Living amends, just watch me be better now. Like, don't expect me to name what I did. That leaves the injured partner carrying the past alone. And what it communicates is that your pain isn't worth naming. Or what it says in so many other ways, whenever you have harmed somebody and it brings you too much shame to bring it up, or you don't allow them to talk about it, what that communicates is that my feelings of shame are more important than the pain that I caused you. It's very selfish. It's very selfish to not let them discuss openly what you've done and how that felt. You need to hear those things. You're an adult. You're going to have to suck it up and listen to these things. And I promise you, you'll feel worse at first, but over time, you'll feel better for it. There's nothing like taking accountability and being able to look the world in the eye and know that you don't have any more secrets and that you've made right all the wrongs that you possibly could. There's no more freeing feeling. Like, after I completed all my ninth step stuff, I just remember the last one I made was with my father-in-law, who I was one that I've very much considered just making a living amends on. But I made amends to my in-laws and for things that I felt like needed to be discussed. I think a lot of people make living amends to their in-laws, but I think it's important that we make direct amends to our in-laws, because they're seeing the shit show from often their daughter's perspective. They're seeing that, and they're seeing what their grandkids are going through, and they have a dog in that fight. They are as much involved as anybody else. They've had to watch that pain. They've got a lot of strong opinions about it. If you want to have a real relationship with those people after addiction, you need to make those things right. You need to give them the space to talk about how scared they were, how in fear they were, how much they were disgusted with you. You need to give them the space to do that. It's not going to hurt you. This is going to help you. I promise you. It's going to help your relationships down the line too. But my father-in-law was one that I've always admired him so much. I respect him. And I was embarrassed. I was with him all day long. We went hunting and fishing, and I was going to bring it up, and I chickened out so many times. I was so nervous the entire day. And leaving the ranch, he owns a ranch, leaving the ranch, I picked up the phone and called him. I said, "Hey, I've been scared to say this all day long, but I need to make some amends to you for the way that I treated your daughter and your grandchildren. And in you some ways, one of the guys I stole medication from, and in you some ways, on the other side of this. And so I can't imagine what it's like to be a father and look at your daughter's life and know that she's not in a healthy relationship, or that she could be in a dangerous relationship, and what that's like as a father. Like, I've got a little girl. I'm going to try not to get choked up here thinking about it, but how scary it must be to not be able to trust the man that she's with, and your grandchildren who you've probably dreamed of having your entire life as part of your life, being in a home with someone like that, someone who's influencing them in those ways, someone who's mistreating them, and all you want for them is just the best. And I felt like that was very much a discussion that we needed to have. And I think he was kind of taken aback by it. I'm not sure he knew what to think of it. This is a guy that, a product of the 60s, like a man's man in every regard, probably wasn't really keen on that kind of a conversation, but I felt like it needed to be had. I did the same thing with my wife's mother, her stepfather, her brothers, and I think that it's important. I think it's important that you make acknowledgement of these things to people. Forgot where I was going with that whole story, but I think it was about living amends, about how it's much easier to just like walk forward and let them see, okay, they're good. But I think for a lot of other people, it's just as important that you say something. It really is. It means everything. I think it makes them feel like they matter. It makes them feel like you can acknowledge their pain and that they matter to you enough that you would bring this up and you would make them the center of your attention for a moment and acknowledge the harms done. It's incredibly important. I think if there's anyone I've made living amends to, I'm not sure I have. I didn't have specifically anyone in my life where they weren't available to me, and I had to like honor their memory. But we can do that. Let's say that you've lost your mother or your father, and you can't go back and talk to them about the things that you put them through, and the fear that they must have been in watching you go through this, and for all the times they stayed up late on your account, worried about you. But you can make those things right in some other ways. You can make those things right in the way that you show up today, and the way that you treat your own children, your own wife. Maybe you do some volunteer work. Maybe you work with troubled youth. There's a lot of ways that we can make living amends. To think of it as karma, right? Like to try to right the imbalance of karma in the world. You got to do something. But I think that this is completely inappropriate if you're in a relationship with somebody. If you're living under the same roof with them, it's not the way it works. The Gottmans have talked about the importance of repair and how relationships really run on repair. And they've done plenty of research here. And what they showed is that consistent failure of repair attempts predicts an unhappy future, and that successful repair is the happy couple's secret weapon. The Gottmans are renowned for their ability to bring together couples that are otherwise broken. We've talked about them briefly here and there. Pretty interesting approach. I like a lot of the stuff that I've read, not all of it, but that's like anything I read, right? There's going to be a lot of parts of it you love, some of it not so much. Just like you with the show, I'm sure there's some stuff you're like, yeah, whatever. I just totally disagree on that. But for the most part, it's pretty good. I see what they're getting at. But it's ultimately how people repair that makes the difference in your future. And living amends is another way of saying not repairing. You're not repairing anything. You're just going to act like this stuff never happened, and you're going to pretend to be right. What's also screwed up about that is that it's a rather controlling way to look at repair, because you shouldn't get to dictate what that necessarily looks like. They deserve input in this. It is their life too. It is their marriage just as much as it is yours. And why men believe that we are somehow like God's gift to the world, and we get to dictate the terms of every sort of repair or amends or restitution, you name it. Like, it's not up to you, man. It's not just up to you. This is a relationship with two people in it, and you don't get to own her. You don't own her. She's not your property. She has a valid say like anyone else does, and you need to drop this routine that it's up to you to decide that you're the leader of repair. Okay, well, leaders are not dictators. Good leaders take hints from other people. They listen. They have humility. They respond. They change their mind whenever the people that they're supposed to be leading, bring a good case to them that would lead them to need to change their direction. That's what good leaders do. They don't just, this is my way or the highway. That's not what leaders do, man. I'm so sick of hearing about these guys. Like, I get disappointed when I see content about men and how shitty some guys are. Because as much as I want to fight and argue with the people who are making these videos, they have every right to, because this is their reality. And there are far more people up to that kind of thing than there are good guys out there. Like, and men aren't holding each other accountable either. Like, part of me doing these episodes was that very thing. It is irresponsible as a male creator to just make content that validates women without also trying to fix the source of the problem, which would be the men. And this is me holding other men accountable. This can be men reaching out to me and holding me accountable. But we've got to start doing that. And so when I see it, I'm going to say something. As long as I have a microphone and a way to get this stuff out there, I'm going to say something. It's only right. It's only right. I just need more guys to help me do this. But relationships run on repair. And here's why validation and acknowledgement actually matter. Why is validation so important? You may think that just it's the future that matters. No, the validation matters too. What it says is that I see the damage that I've caused and I am responsible. It reduces the gaslighting, it reduces the confusion, and it lowers the arousal in your partner's nervous system when this stuff comes up. It gives them closure. The unspoken harm remains unfinished if you don't acknowledge this stuff. It prolongs the trauma processing that they have to do. And for the addicted partner, someone like me, facing the shame versus avoiding it builds humility. And it actually, I think it builds relapse resilience. You're going to go through tough things. You need to feel these feelings and get used to this feeling. I mean, life is tough, man. Recovery starts after you leave treatment. Treatment's just an education you get, but like the real emotions and the real things that you're going to face in the world, life is tough. Get a helmet. You're going to need experiences like this. They're important. It's I think that shame avoidance keeps recovery really, really shallow. And for as much as we want to shield people from shame serves a purpose, y'all. And I'm tired of arguing with people about that one too. And it's usually people who are still in addiction or trying to get sober that say that. And it's ironic, isn't it? Is that you talk to anyone who's on the other side of addiction and they will tell you their shame served a purpose. You talk to anyone who's still in it and they're saying it doesn't. Who would you listen to? Shame's important. Doesn't feel good. You don't need to stay there forever by any means, but it is a very important emotion that can drive change. It is. But if you're never going to acknowledge the pain that you've put someone through, imagine what it's like in their shoes. Imagine what it's like for her to go about life and you're just acting like everything's cool and you're never going to talk about the time that you cheated. You're never going to talk about the time that you hit them or that you went to jail or that you lied or the years and years and years of torment that you put them through and what that was like for them. You don't give them the space. It's not okay to talk about it. That's what you're communicating. It is not okay to talk about it. What you're communicating in so many ways, even if you don't mean it this way, is that your feelings don't matter. My decisions about moving forward are what matter, not your feelings. If you ever want to have a marriage worth anything, their feelings matter greatly. We have to give people the space to acknowledge these things. We have to give people the space to say what it was like living with us. We have to give them the power to do that. And living amends do not fucking cut it. That is not enough. It is not enough. You've got to make real amends. So for the person that wrote in, I'm sorry that you're going through this. I'm sorry that that's been your experience. And you are right to be pissed about it. You are right to think that that's bullshit because it is absolute bullshit. And if you're someone on the other side like me and you thought, hey, I'm just going to do better. I don't really want to talk about this stuff because it brings up my shame. My shame's bad for my recovery. Bullshit. That's not the way it works. Recovery is in acknowledging these things and making sense of these things so that we don't repeat them again. But you have to, justice requires that you step forward and you give them the time of day to talk about it. Skipping amends, here's another thing you do. If you skip this part, if you don't let them talk about it, for your spouse, it's going to keep them in the state of hypervigilance. Does he even remember? Could it happen again? These are real thoughts that they would have. Do they even remember it? Do they even care? Or the worst, could this happen again? Because generally when we say we're sorry and we acknowledge pain, we're acknowledging that we know that that's something that we shouldn't do and shouldn't do again. If you never say anything at all, what are people to believe? Are you just going to assume they know what you're thinking? Well, how would that be if you never talk? How would that be if you're never having conversations like this? They don't know. You have to say it. The only thing standing between you and that conversation is your ego. And that needs to, no place for that here. Zero. But for the addicted partner, for me, like avoidance blocks growth in general, period. And sobriety without accountability is really nothing more than just dry behavior. You can just change, move forward, but that's not a marriage I would ever want to be part of. So I think that in order to have real repair, you have to name the specific harms and no minimizing them. Name them, all of the ones that you're aware of anyway, and own them and say, that was my choice, not yours. You didn't deserve that. You didn't deserve to be treated that way. You didn't deserve to be talked to that way. Say the words, I'm sorry, and discuss the impact that they had that you can see. You have to create some empathy here. And empathy is incredibly important for the future of your relationships too. And then living differently comes after the fact, right? But I think before that even, you need to give them space to say, is there anything that I haven't really addressed or that you need to talk about what this was like? How would you like to see me repair this? That is a fair question to ask. That is what justice demands. I don't get to determine what repair looks like. You do. You tell me what you need to feel safe again. Then that's what's missing whenever someone just wants to do living amends, is that you don't ever get a say in how you feel safe again. It's up to them. And how does that make sense? How's that fair? It's up to the abuser to determine how you, the victim, gets to feel safe again. That's not the way it works, guys. It's not the way it works. And then after all that, then you can live differently. But you deserve acknowledgement, this person that wrote this in, and everyone else that's been going through this. And the longer this goes on, probably the harder it gets, I would imagine. If he won't revisit this, if he doesn't talk to you about this, it's unfortunately, you're not left with too many options. We can talk about acceptance here in a moment, but he's showing you who he is. That's what take from that what you want, but that's all I have to say, is that he's showing you who he is, if that makes sense. Okay. Let's bridge this together with a little discussion quickly on acceptance and spirituality. So when you fall into a situation where you don't have, let's say that you can never get someone to repair in just the way that you would want them to if they're not up to it. I think that Paige and I got really lucky in some ways, that because we were both emotionally intelligent enough to kind of understand what repair needed to look like, even if we weren't wholly we didn't understand the whole thing back in 2013. I think we had a pretty good idea about each other's emotional states, and repair was going to be possible. But for so many other people, it's not. And there's going to be a lot of things that you go through that you'll never get justice on. You'll never get an apology for. You'll never get a reason for. There would be people who separate against their will. Because someone's left them no choice. They'll have to cut contact with people. They'll have to remove custody of children from people. And they'll have to go through some really difficult things. And they will never get, quote unquote, their day in court to hear someone say that they're sorry. And I really struggled with the idea of acceptance. Acceptance was an impossibly vague concept to me when I first got sober. On page 417 in AA's book, I think are some of the best words ever written about recovery. There's actually a tattoo on my rib cage that says acceptance is the answer, and this is what it came from. So I'm going to read this briefly, and then we're going to talk about it, and I think establish a framework for spirituality for someone who may not have one. And it says, acceptance is the answer to all my problems today. When I am disturbed, it is because I find some person, place, thing, or situation, some fact in my life unacceptable to me, and I can find no serenity until I accept that person, place, thing, or situation as being exactly the way it is supposed to be at this moment. Nothing, absolutely nothing, happens in God's world by mistake. Until I could accept my alcoholism, I could not stay sober. Unless I accept life completely on life's terms, I cannot be happy. I need to concentrate not so much on what needs to be changed in the world as on what needs to be changed in me and in my attitudes. Shakespeare said, all the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. He forgot to mention that I was the chief critic. I was always able to see the flaw in every person, every situation, and I was always glad to point it out because I knew you wanted perfection just as I did. AA and acceptance have taught me that there's a bit of good in the worst of us and a bit of bad in the best of us, that we are all children of God and we each have a right to be here. When I complain about me or about you, I am complaining about God's handiwork. I am saying I know better than God. This was tremendously helpful for me, an alcoholic, drug addict. what I want to preface this entire conversation with is that the afflictions that I was dealing with in addiction and being completely unable to cope with basic general life and feeling the need to use a substance to make my inner world feel okay is not the same as someone who is being abused. It is not the same. And I don't want anyone who is dealing with abuse to hear something like this and think, I just need to accept it better. There's a lot of nuance in here, and I will do my best, but I hope that you can see the distinction, right? For someone who's struggling with addiction, and a lot of the reasons I used were like basic, like, guys, sometimes it could be something big, but sometimes it was something really basic. Sometimes I could just be really busy and I got fed up of being an adult. Like I got sick and tired of my phone ringing. I got tired of having a lot of pressure on me. I got sick and tired of all the bills that we had. And like, I just could not deal with it emotionally. I could not handle it and I needed to escape. And so I put something in my body and it made me feel better. And that's what I was doing. My problem wasn't just the fact that I liked an altered state. My problem was that I struggled so bad with anxiety and stress of a world without tools that I couldn't process, that I needed something to make me feel okay. I think that acceptance was a really powerful way for me to kind of be introduced to spirituality, because what it really made me do was look at reality. And like it says in this little thing that I read, until I could accept my alcoholism, I could not stay sober. And unless I accept life completely on life's terms, I cannot be happy. I need to concentrate not so much on what needs to be changed in the world as on what needs to be changed in me and in my attitudes. So when I'm driving down the freeway and there's traffic, I have a choice to make. I can get really angry, or I can look at the big picture and say, it's just traffic and it's okay. A lot of people have moved here. I could have left earlier. I could have done a lot of things. I may not like it, but I have to accept it. And this is true of people as well. I may not like the way that someone treats me, but that's who they are. That's them. As much as I would like to change that, as much as I think I deserve different treatment, that's who they are. And now we have a decision to make, right? So this does allow for boundaries. This allows for people to get to safety and everything else. But I think what it does more than anything is it helps me separate what I wish the world would be and what the world is. For so long, I struggled with this idea that I could affect change in the world. If I bitched about it enough, if I willed people enough, if I manipulated people enough, if I worked hard enough, then I could get people to act the way I wanted, and then I could feel okay. And then the reality, what it says is that they're not doing it to you. They're just doing it. That's just what they're doing. And you have a choice to make. You can accept them or not. And if you don't, good luck with that. That's what led to a lot of my drinking and my drug use. Truly, it was. But what I don't want to do is to hear anyone take this and think that acceptance is the same as an agreement or enabling or like condoning or anything else. I think what it does when we look at this idea of acceptance is that it stops the energy drain of fighting reality. And it sort of returns your power of choice, right? So framing this in the addicted sense, I've just kind of done that. But for a spouse or a partner, if you live with someone who is struggling with addiction, if you live with someone who is treating you poorly, the reality is that they are treating you poorly. The reality is they are struggling with addiction. The reality is they have a million choices they can make at any given time that can set them on a new trajectory. You can influence some things in their life. You can create an environment in some ways that would make it easier, but it is not by no means a guarantee that they will change. You wanting things to be different is also not codependent. God forbid humans want to feel safe and secure. God forbid. You're not codependent for wanting that, right? But I think that acceptance a lot of times, especially in like Al-Anon and in codependency speak, can be misconstrued. I think that a lot of times what they use this as is a way of getting you to be okay with mistreatment. And that's not what it's intended to do. What it's intended to do is, I think, the most valuable thing that ever came out of Al-Anon are the 3 C's. That you didn't cause it, can't control it, can't change it. Aren't those them? Control, change. I think so. I could be wrong there. You get the point either way, the 3 C's. And it's true. That, you didn't cause it. You can't change it. It was caused. That was the one. You didn't cause it. I think it's important to understand like where you start and they end, right? You have to accept that that's who they are. That's the way they're treating you. That's what they've chosen to do. All the context in the world can help it make sense, but it's not changing the fact that that's what they're doing. And then you have to make a decision about what you do next. Most of the time that's leave. I don't know a nicer way to say it. Most of the time it's get to safety, get into a better situation that's healthier for you. Maybe it could even be beneficial for them. It could, but it's certainly more beneficial for the children. But I think for me, this was revolutionary. In 12-step literature, they gave me freedom to explore spirituality. I had trouble with religion for a long time, a really hard time with religion. If you can't tell, I don't do rules very well. I didn't like when people had rules for me. I didn't like when people would tell me, you have to think this way or say this way or pray this way or believe these things or else. If you give me some sort of an ultimatum, like I enjoy tapping the rules to see if they will break. So me and religion didn't get along when I was little. Maybe it was the way it was taught to me. I don't know. Maybe I was just I don't know, a contrarian maybe of sorts when I was younger, especially. I like to argue. And I like to poke holes in things. And I like to play the hypocrisy game. I like to play the whataboutisms games. I like to play the gotcha game. And so I was more interested in misunderstanding it than trying to understand what people were really getting out of it. So when I checked into a treatment center, I'll never forget it. They stuck me in the detox lounge. When I first checked in, they stuck me out with a nurse, and the nurse was just doing like an evaluation on me. They were drug testing me. They were figuring out what was in my system, if I was telling the truth about that. Oh man, God, that was embarrassing. They tested me for like 6 or 7 substances, and I failed for 5, I think. There was a lot of stuff in my system at the time. There was amphetamine. That was from Adderall. There was marijuana, alcohol, opioids, benzos. And I think they tested for cocaine, but I wasn't positive for cocaine because that guy wasn't answering his phone. I was a mess, man. I was a mess. I very well could have tested positive for all that crap. But anyway, I'm giving this poor nurse like my entire life story, and she's just trying to get me in there. It's like 1:00 in the morning when I checked in. She was a sweetheart. Name was Bonnie. Love Bonnie. See her every once in a while to this day. She's awesome. But anyway, I wasn't really sure what treatment was about. I certainly didn't understand what the 12 steps were trying to achieve. But when they stuck me, they took me from that room, they stuck me in a detox lounge, and I'm back there, and there's like comfy couches and stuff. And they had this fridge that was full of had like Go-Gurt and other yogurt and like protein shakes. And like, there was a drawer full of like Snickers bars. And I was like, oh man, this is kind of cool. I like this. And I was sitting down eating a candy bar, and I looked up at the wall, and the 12 steps were on the wall. And I was like, okay, what the hell is this, man? All I ever knew about 12 steps was what I'd seen in the movie Fight Club. If we've ever seen Fight Club, you kind of know what I mean. Not much, right? Not much at all. And I'm reading, I see the first step, and I'm like, okay, I'm in the right place, I think, man. I get to the second step, and I'm like, where are they going with this? And then I got to step 3, and I read it, and I was like, fuck this. I want a refund. I got to get my ass out of here. How in the world am I going to talk to Paige about why I'm leaving? Or then I have this other thought was, how in the world am I going to convince these people that I believe in God so that they don't ask me too many questions, because it's none of their effing business. This is ridiculous. Why are we discussing God? This makes no sense. I thought I had just scratched a check for Vacation Bible School. I was like, what does this have to do with my drug and alcohol problem? This is absolutely crazy. It was nuts. And so I probably would have left if not for underlined in the 3rd step. It says, as we understood him. So that was massive for me, because they gave me some freedom to talk about spirituality in the way that made sense to me. They gave me a place to start. They weren't requiring that I believe the way that they did or anything else. And I think that was a really, really, really crucial turning point in my life. The step, if you're not aware, it says, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. And so with that, as we understood him, I was given some freedom back, much needed at the time, because I was really struggling with giving up my will as it was. But I didn't know it at the time, but this was probably the biggest turning point in my entire life. And I was a non-believer. I didn't believe in God, but I believed in acceptance. I remember reading, as I was in there, I was reading the book. I read page 417 and I was like, that's it, isn't it? That's it. Acceptance is my higher power. Something bigger than me that humbles, grounds, and it sort of pulls me out of like this self-will loop. That was my first form of spirituality. It really was. And it was simply this. On one hand, I had what I wanted. On the other hand, I had what is. And what is was going to win every single time. What is, and not accepting what is, was the very thing that was keeping me in a position where I felt like I had to put something in my body to feel okay. It kept me in fear. It kept me in anger. That was the root of it all for me, was just what is versus what I wished there would be. And that was the start of it for me. And so in the very beginning, I remember going outside and I looked up at the sky and I was just kind of blown away by it. Like, as much as I can sit here and argue that there's just nothing. Who made all this? What's all of this about? Right? I had to leave the possibility open that there was a 0.0000001% chance that there could have been some sort of something behind this. I don't know what it looked like or what it was, but I knew that I had to open my mind to the possibility that it could be something. And maybe even not like an intelligent creator, but something. Maybe it wasn't the different religions I'd heard about, but it could be something. And it was that tiny little mustard seed that started to grow that changed everything for me. My spirituality today, I've explored it through various methods. I've Taoism, which we've talked about here on the show. There's a really good book called Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life. Wayne Dyer wrote it. It's really, really good. It's a sort of a modern day interpretation of the Tao. I've read books about Christianity. I've read books about Buddhism. And from every single one of them, I've found something that's kind of pieced together this Frankenstein sort of idea about what brings me peace. And the thing that I pray to and the thing that I revere, and this concept that is bigger than me. But I think what it really did more than anything is it brought me a level of peace and comfort that I never achieved on my own, that I couldn't with just understanding stochastic calculus or probabilities and permutations and combinations and all the crap that I studied in school that I thought made me, a fortune teller in some ways. As I studied finance, there was something going on that I had to quit denying. And we covered some things when there's this spiritual advisor in the treatment center. He was great, man. And he ran me through various studies as we were having debates about like, why does this have anything to do with anything? They did a meta-analysis of over 600,000 people. And what they found was that spirituality and or religion correlates with higher life satisfaction than not. So that people who generally believe in something bigger than them, regardless of what it is, it could just be the idea of karma, right? It could be like a true like religion doctrine. It could be anything. They're happier, period. And so he looked at me and he's like, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? I was like, God, I want to be happy more than anything. I just want to be happy, man. I'm so sick of fighting. I want peace in my life. But then we went on, and people who have spirituality or religion in their life are linked to better mental and physical health outcomes on average. The mechanisms of that are generally meaning. You derive meaning in something. Your pain even serves a purpose. You have a purpose, whatever that might be. Community is a huge part of that as well. Feeling like you're something part of an organization bigger than you, even that you're working towards something important. And then regulation as well, having a way to regulate tough emotions, having a way to deal with loss, having a way to deal with pain. And I have mechanisms for all of these things now that I didn't before. And so as much as we can say that like, yeah, recovery is a lot about like cognitively changing the way that your brain works, this was massively beneficial for me in ways that I'd never realized, like truly, ways that I could find peace. Man, there were days early on that were really, really tough. There were moments I felt like me and Paige were out of the woods and then something would pop up, right? It could be her reliving a really traumatic period that we were going through. And she would just get down and sad. And I would sit there like, we were almost there. We were on the right track. This is ridiculous. What the hell? And I would just get quiet and I would just listen to the world. And nature is a big part of my spirituality. I would get quiet. I'd listen to nature and I'd be like, what does the spirit say? Spirit would often give me the right answers. I don't know where they were coming from. Maybe it's my brain working in some obtuse way. I don't know. But I just know that something was happening inside of me that was different, and I was changing. And I became a real believer in something. What that is today, I still don't know, guys. And I don't want you to hear that and think, oh my God, I need to send him a long email about how he needs to join my church so I can save his soul. It's not like that. I respect you. I would just ask that you respect my journey as well. That's all. Okay. I think it's amazing where you're at. I think that there's beauty in every single path of people looking for something bigger than them. Every single one of them offers something amazing to people. So many benefits. And I think that it's exploring something where we find little bits and pieces of what it means to be human and how to make sense of a world that really, there are no reasons for why terrible shit happens. There aren't. I've come to understand that there are some people who are just fucking evil and they do evil things, and that we have the power to choose that kind of stuff, to do that stuff or not to do that stuff. And so as I believe God, it's not something that can prevent catastrophe. It's just this whatever invisible thing connects us in a million different ways through molecules that I can't even observe, and the mystery of it. I heard this comedian, I think Pete Holmes is his name, and he had something beautiful to say about the word God and spirituality. He said that God is just the name of the blanket that we put over the mystery to give it shape and form. That's it. And I think that can be anything that you want it to be. I think it could start small. I knew this guy who was sober like a decade, and he was happily sober. He was doing it the right way. His quote unquote higher power was the Force. If you've ever seen Star Wars, he kind of came up with his own conception of it. And if you listen to him explain it, it sort of made sense too. It was sort of like karma in some ways, but there was this idea that there's right and there's wrong, and he had moral principles behind it, and he believed it. And he was sober, and he was happy, and he was useful to people. And so you could sit here and say he's wrong, but he would just slide his 10-year coin across the table and say, something's going right. And you'd have to agree with him. You would have to. But there was also made clear a distinction, for me anyway, between religion and spirituality. I was told, and I believe this, is that religion is for people who are afraid to go to hell, and spirituality is for people who have already been there before. Oftentimes, spirituality and religion can go hand in hand, but spirituality, I think, is sort of the deepest meaning and values by which you live. And it's a very, very personal relationship with the values and the principles by which you live and wherever they come from. And I think that religion is oftentimes the rituals that we use to get in touch with those things. It's the container, if you will. It's, the organized belief, the rituals, the doctrine, the community, the accountability of it all. But spirituality it's your personal connection to meaning, purpose, transcendence. It's very individual. It's very flexible, and both can be really helpful. I think they can be harmful too, which we're not going to get into, but some rigid fear-based consequence type stuff isn't always helpful for people. But I know that a lot of people really struggle with squaring these two worlds when it comes to ultimately where a lot of people get, which is like divorce and separation. Because I think so much is said about the ways we should behave if you've been married in the Christian church, for instance, and what you're supposed to do and not supposed to do when it comes to the duties of a husband or a wife. And I would just say that you need to read the work of Dr. David Clark, and you need to read a book called, oh my God, what is it called? Enough is Enough. You need to read Enough is Enough, and then Good Boundaries and Goodbyes, which are both books written by devout Christians, and they make a biblical case for you setting boundaries. They walk you through more biblical examples than you can possibly count about people setting boundaries. I think sometimes religion can be used by abusive men to keep women right where they want them. It can also be used by abusive men to set repair patterns that benefit them and not the woman. I think that there are really some abusive things that some people will use and weaponize and bastardize. And I don't know what book you guys read, because I read the same book and that's not what I got from it at all. Not in the slightest. I guess it depends on your perspective, and a sick mind will get whatever it wants, but that's not what I've read. But I know that that's what people generally talk about, and this is the kind of shame that we deliver to women who are trying to get to safety. There's a million things in there that people will weaponize about divorce. God hates divorce, for instance. Go back and read the context of that and where it comes from. Really go read it. What it's talking about is talking about abusive men. God hates men that divorce their wives and mistreat them. It's not talking about you. And it's so ironic that abusive men oftentimes use that toward women. Anyway, I don't want to get too far off on the weeds here, but there are biblical cases to be made for boundaries. But I think that there are also, when it comes to your spirituality and your framework, I know a lot of people don't know where to start. I started with something really small, and it was me getting outside at night, looking up the stars, and sort of coming to terms with the fact that there were cosmic events happening all around me that I couldn't explain, or even if I could, and I wouldn't really understand. And that was amazing. And then it made me feel really small. Have you ever sat next to the ocean or a mountain and realized how small you really are? It's in those moments of like humility, I should say, that make me feel like I'm connected to something much bigger, that make me feel like I'm just a small part in something huge, and I'm suddenly not the center of the world. And there's also in those moments that I'm able to frame when I'm going through really difficult stuff. Like, I've gone through career issues more times than I can count and felt like it was going to be the end of the world, that I was going to lose everything. And then I always fall back on my spiritual principles and know that acceptance is the answer, and that no matter what, I'm going to be okay. You know, nothing happens in God's world by mistake. Doesn't mean that I like everything. Doesn't mean it's all right. Just it happens, and I have to accept that. I have to believe that. I do. It doesn't explain why horrible tragedies happen to children. It doesn't explain any of that stuff. And I don't think anyone can actually offer an explanation for that would ever make me feel okay about it. I just have to understand that the world is, and it's not for me to determine the why. It's just up to me to determine that I have to accept it. This is reality, and that I have to move forward. I started with that simple idea, and then I started to read the Tao. It helped a lot. I read this book called Ruthless Trust by a guy named Brennan Manning. He's a Christian author. He was a former Benedictine monk, and he was an alcoholic. Actually died of alcoholism, I believe, or complications from it. But in his periods of sobriety, he wrote some of the most beautiful words about faith and trust. I was on a stair climber at 5 a.m. reading this book over the course of a couple of weeks, just bawling my eyes out in there by myself. I mean, just beautifully written, beautifully written. Refuge Recovery is another really good book. Noah Levine wrote that. It's about a Buddhist perspective of recovery and spirituality. And whatever you choose, just start somewhere. Start something. It's not wrong wherever you start, man. I promise you the Spirit will guide you in some way and you'll find peace from it. But kind of back to the original discussion here, for a lot of people, this is where we will land. There's so many things in my life that have happened with people that I've done, that the world has happened in the world that I will never be able to make sense of. But I can always fall back on my values and my principles. And that is, in some ways, I think, the basis of my spirituality. If you don't know where to start, if you need a compass, start with your values. What do your values say? Integrity, truth, family, service, growth, love, acceptance. Write them down, whatever those are, right? And your values become the compass that spirituality points toward. And without them, you're just kind of floating. I had to actually write this stuff down in the beginning. And I would have to ask myself all of the time, am I living according to my values and my principles? And if I was, in a lot of ways, that was my way of living spirituality. That was the way that I got in touch with it. That's the way I still do to this day. And choose your pathway, whatever it might be. This could be a religious tradition. This could be scripture. This could be church. This could be prayer. This could be sacraments. This could be any number of things that bring you closer to the traditional ways that we think of religion or spirituality. This could also be nature-based. For me, a lot of times just feeling awe. The cycles of nature. I got sober in a treatment center during the spring, and I'll never forget it. I don't believe it was a coincidence. I don't believe in coincidences anymore. I was there at a time when things were changing, right? Suddenly, everything's budding and there's baby birds and stuff's coming back to life. And I felt like that was a metaphor for my life at the time. Like I was doing the same thing. And I was just in awe of it. I was in awe of everything around me and how we ended up here, and it made me feel small, and I needed that. I needed to remember that I wasn't the center of the world. It was huge. Nature-based is still a way that I get in touch in some way that I can't even describe, where I just feel so connected to everything around me. It could be principle based. This could strictly be principle based. This could just be your higher power being a set of principles that you've created, right? Justice, truth, love, acceptance, whatever it might be. And you live by these values. You allow other people into your life based on those values. You make sense of the world based on those values. The next decision you make based on those values. It could be community based. Maybe it's that you feel most in touch with the world and the people around you when you're being of service to others. This is a big one for me. It gives you a sense of belonging, shared rituals of some kind. Maybe whenever you join TUFO meetings, that's some sort of spiritual practice for you. It is, right? It's such a broad realm, and all are welcome. And there are no rules here. There are no rules here. That's my favorite part. No rules. Like I said, I always love to tap rules to see if they would break. When it came to spirituality, there are none. There are none. And don't ever let anyone tell you that there are. You get to experience this in your own individual way. And it's truly a beautiful and really fun adventure. This could even be sort of an inner contemplative type of spirituality. So that's mindfulness. This can be meditation. This can be silence. Just simply being, experiencing the world right as it is right in this moment. I've used this in a multitude of ways. I've used this to stay sober in moments where I had trouble staying sober. I've used this to accept some very, very stressful situations that calmed me in a way that allowed me to respond. I have used this to deal with the fear when my children have been sick or hurt or in danger. I've dealt with this to really think about some really the deeper meaning questions, like what's the point of all this? What's the point of my life? What am I here for? But ask yourself some guiding questions like, what do I turn to when life overwhelms me? What reliably reminds me that I'm not the center of the universe? Where do I feel most connected to love, to truth, to meaning? And what practices realign me when I drift? Like I have a set of rituals. Every morning before my feet hit the ground, I say a quick prayer. And I don't pray for stuff. My God's not a genie in the sky, does not grant wishes, does not care that I need to hit the lottery, does not give a shit. I ask for knowledge of what I need to do that day, which is more or less asking for inspiration to live by those principles that we discussed earlier, and then just give me the power to carry those things out. That's pretty much it. That's all I've ever asked for. I don't ask for anything else. I made a deal with God a long time ago. If he got me out of this deal, I would never ask for anything else ever again. And I would be helpful to all his children for the rest of my life in any way that I possibly could. And that's what I continue to show up in a lot of ways here in other places to help other people. Because I've seen the power of this thing. Man, I think that another part of it's also been throughout the day, restarting my day. In the beginning, I memorized some really basic prayers. They started from AA, and they were sort of secular in a lot of ways. I think since then, I've picked up on some other prayers that I really like. Find some that work for you. You can explore whatever you want it to be, but I would suggest you explore something. And it's not just because I'm saying that you need that. What I'm saying is that you're really selling yourself short on there's some happiness to be found that maybe you haven't looked at. There's a rock to turn over that you can find something beautiful. And there really is. It's a very personal journey. Paige and I were on different, this was kind of interesting too. We haven't really talked about this on the show. I had a head start on this, and I would have considered myself a deeply spiritual person years before she ever considered it. Paige didn't become spiritual in the slightest until she hit rock bottom with her depression and anxiety. And that was probably sober 5 years at that point, but I was never the person who would come in and tell her you need to read this, you need to understand this, you need to try this. It was more or less, it became like a thing of attraction. She's like, how do you stay calm? How do you stay happy? Since you asked, this is what I've been doing, and this has been working for me. And maybe there's something here for you too. You should, take a look at it, and I'll help you. I'll send you some stuff. If I read it and I find it helpful, then you can read it too. And little by slow, she cracked that door open. And then, the light just got brighter and brighter and brighter, and she found her own way to it. And it would probably look different for both of us. But I think we both agree at the end of the day that we found a way that we can find peace in the world that makes no sense. And I think that when we're in these sorts of relationships, there is some component of that that's rather helpful. We can talk all day long about boundaries. We can talk all day long about right and wrong, but there would be quiet moments in your life where you're sitting there thinking, what the fuck am I doing? And you just want what's best for you, and you feel like you need inspiration from something higher. In my experience, anytime I've ever asked, it just shows up. And it's usually the thing that I'm avoiding the most. It's usually the thing I don't want to do. It's that quiet, tiny ass little voice delivering that difficult truth. I think there's something to that. So is it a part of my consciousness? Maybe is it God? I don't know. I just don't care. It just works. That's where I'm at with it. I don't even want to have the debates anymore, man. I just know that it's worked. It's worked for me. It's worked for other people I've known. It could probably work for you too. It really could. So when it comes to acceptance, that was a huge one for me. It was so important to me. Like I said, I got it tattooed on my ribs, and I took it way too far in the beginning too. I think acceptance is a great place to start for spirituality. If you were like me and you have no basis of it whatsoever, it's a great place to start. But I took it too far. Acceptance to me meant allowing people to treat me like shit. It meant continuing to put myself in toxic situations, expecting, like, I'll just be straight with you. I have a family member who I do not talk to or get along with. And life has gotten infinitely easier since I no longer involve that person in my day to day. But there for a long time, I continued to try to involve them, and they would continue to be abusive. They would continue to lie. They continue to be the very things that I was doing when I was in active addiction. And I'm like, I just have to accept them. That's just who they are. No, you don't. That's the thing that I didn't understand is you don't. I have to accept that that is who they are, but I don't have to accept that treatment either. I can have boundaries. I can choose what affects me and what doesn't. Same with my job. There were parts of my job that drove me fucking crazy. I'm like, well, that's just the way it is. No, you can delegate. You can learn to manage people. You can learn how to stand up for yourself and advocate for yourself. You don't have to eat shit forever. Believe it or not, God wants you to be happy too. I always felt like I had to, I don't know. For a long time, I really screwed this up, and I took it I was way too far. But in doing that, if I had to go back and do it again, I would change nothing, because I learned so much about the world when I truly thought that, like, you can't hurt my feelings because only I can give you permission to do that. Like, that's how far I took this. It's like, you can say whatever you want to me. I have to make the decision for myself if that's true. That's not true. When your husband or your wife tells you that you are a sorry piece of shit, it hurts. Okay. That's not in the purest monk sense. Yeah. Do you sort of give them permission? Sort of. But that's not what we're talking. Let's just common sense here, guys. It's harmful, and you don't have to put yourself in those situations. But it was huge. It was the beginning of it for me, and then I've learned the nuance of it since. And so that tattoo, I proudly on my rib cage, man. On the other rib cage, I have a "Till the Wheels Fall Off" tattoo, which I think I've never posted it. I don't know. Hopefully, not too many shirtless photos of me out there, but first time I ever went to Salem, Massachusetts, which I love. It's like my favorite. Boston's my favorite town in the world. I was up there, and there's these old headstones, and there's this cool old headstone with like skull and crossbones. Old headstones are so cool, man. They're like morbid. And so I took a picture of it, took it to the tattoo artist, and he recreated that headstone. And instead of having anyone's name on it, like my name, or it just says "Till the Wheels Fall Off" in like old cursive, like New England font, like old English font, sort of. And this was long before the show ever, long before the show. But that was like my way of saying, like, till the wheels fall off, I will continue to fight. I will continue to fight to be better, just like I hope it is for you guys. It's not just a battle cry for couples. It's so much deeper than that. So much deeper than that. So we started this episode with the wound of living amends and the damage and the pain that can leave because people think it sort of substitutes for real repair, and it doesn't. And then we kind of turned into acceptance, as in, like, not as rolling over, but as a higher power of sorts. If you don't know where to start, that gives your choice back, that allows you to choose what you expose yourself to and what you don't. So whether you find that power in God or in community or in the simple truth of reality, build a framework that's anchored in values so that you're not alone whenever life hits hard. And truth always starts with acceptance, though. No matter what, you cannot get around that. Truth starts with acceptance. Oftentimes it's painful, and it's okay. That pain serves a purpose. So stop fighting with what is and step into the freedom of what you choose to do next. That's what I did when I walked through recovery and my path to spirituality, which I don't think that you need to follow my path. I just would recommend that you try something, because my experience with that is I've been a hell of a lot happier and more at peace And I haven't felt the need to change the way I feel in almost 13 years, coming up on 13 years. And that's amazing. But it's also, it's more than just that, right? It's changing your behaviors. There's some cognitive basis to recovery as well. But I think that spirituality just in general, since the dawn of time, has helped people, and it could possibly help you too if you're open to looking at it in a different light, or maybe rediscovering it too. I've got a friend that said recovery was way easier for me than him, because he said that him and Jesus got high for 34 years together, and he never stopped believing. He never stopped praying. So whenever he got to recovery, they were like, it's, God's going to fix this. And he was like, dude, I've forgotten more about God than you'll ever know. His dad being a pastor and whatnot. He's like, how is this going to fix me? What he ultimately came to understand was that he believed in God, but he wasn't a team player. And probably had a different relationship with him than he really believed. He had to really question some things and start being a team player, as he put it. And it's completely revolutionized the way he looks at his relationship with God. And our ideas are completely different. But at the end of the day, we can both agree on the most fundamental pieces of it. And it's a beautiful thing. It really is. It really is. So for those of you that have asked for this, my thoughts on it, I'm sure this was a little bit vague. Maybe if we sat down at a coffee shop, I'd be more open to really getting in the weeds of it. But I think it's just important that you got something, right? Because it can give us peace in times when nothing else will. It really can. I never want to become a group that pushes this sort of thing either. I think it's something we'll always talk about, let people know exists. We will give people, ideas about maybe where to go look, and talk about the benefits of it. But it's never certainly going to be a requirement to be in TUFO or in our community, which, by the way, we have a private community. If you weren't aware of, we got a community for listeners where you can go and be with other people who are going through this. You can go and just vent. You can post anonymously. You don't have to be known that you're going through. You can tell your story. You can give feedback. Like, we encourage that, and I never want TUFO ever to be something that has, like, the only requirement is that you listen to the show. That's it, right? That's it. Like, there are a lot of recovery groups. This one happens to be ours. We talk about our content. We talk about things that you've learned through the content, things you've learned through therapy. The only common thread that binds us is that you happen to stumble across the content. That's it. After that, it's pretty much open game. So I think spirituality can be a part of that. We're never gonna require that it be, but I think it is something that a lot of people have found help and hope in, but we don't talk about enough. But it has saved my life. It's changed my life drastically. And it's a really hard thing to talk about with some people. We get very angry. We get very close-minded. I would just encourage you, remain open-minded about it. If you were anything like me and you don't know where to start, they can just start with reality and then branch from there. Just be open. Just remain open. And I would say that you're well on your way as long as you've got an open mind. So I hope this has been helpful. It's been fun for me. Talk about some things I never really get to discuss. Oftentimes episodes like this get the least amount of downloads because it's like sort of a deeper, more, I don't know what you would call this concept. I don't know. It's more of like the work of recovery than it is like the validation type episodes or like the soundbite type episodes. This is the stuff that I hope can really help people, though, for the one of two of you that really take this to heart. And I hope you do. I hope you explore what this means for you in some way, shape, or form. And whatever you decide, it's not wrong as long as you're working at it. It's not wrong. Don't let anyone tell you that. And if they do and they're in the community, let me know because they're getting bad. All right, that's all I've got. Until next time, I'm Matt, and I'll see you.